Hi, and welcome to episode 3 of Healthy Selfish. I'm your host, Monique Selman, and I'm the owner of Becoming Enriched. I'm so excited to talk to you today, right? This whole series is about boundaries. How can we set boundaries, what they are, right? How do we understand them and communicate them? But today is all about choice, choosing your boundaries, which is one of my favorite things, because it really does help us understand where our limits are. That's what this whole thing is going to be about. Like, you have to decide your boundaries before you can actually do anything with them, communicate them, talk to them. And so today we get to have a lot of exploration. We'll talk about our feelings, how we're understanding where we want to draw the line in the sand, and just figuring out what you want to choose for yourself. Let's hop in. Okay, so how do you know when you need a boundary, right? And when you're just uncomfortable? Because sometimes things do make us uncomfortable, but we don't need to necessarily change anything. Just discomfort is a fact of life. It's one of those things where we will constantly feel like, I wouldn't do it again, right? And so this could be experiences, this could be people that we might hang out with, all of those things. And so times when you'll notice that you need a boundary. Feeling frustrated. So if you're feeling frustrated, that means that something has likely happened multiple times, right? This is not the first go around. It's not the first occurrence. And so we have really noticed a pattern where we're just like, ugh, why does that keep happening? Why do you keep doing that? Why? That is going to be your first sign that you actually need a boundary. This is going to start to tell us that we need to communicate something so we can stop that frustration, right? Frustration happens when we have repetitively had a problem, and so that's what we want to be looking for. If you are feeling angry, that is a good sign that you need a boundary. Someone has upset you. Maybe they have hurt your feelings. Maybe they did not consider you. Maybe they forgot an important day or birthday for you, right? If we're noticing that we're feeling a lot of anger, that's going to be a place where we should start considering that we might need a boundary in that interaction. And then feeling uneasy. So uneasiness is one of those really hard to you can't pin it down well, right? It's kind of a gut feeling we have to understand and start listening to ourselves for. And so if you are feeling uneasy, if there's something we're like, I'm not sure, but I know something is there, you really do want to take a minute to pause and look at it. Your body is feeling uneasy for a reason. Trust yourself and figure out what that reason is. And so often, instead of listening to yourself and really recognizing okay, yeah, I got to tell you stop, I don't like this, we'll often just be like, it's fine, right? I'll get over it. It's not a big deal. I'll figure it out. That's exactly what we don't want. We don't want to do that. It might not be fine, right? And maybe you'll get over it this time, but will you get over it every time after? That's why we want to set boundaries early, because we want to stop problems before they even happen. And so it's understanding that the feelings are a starting point, not the actual problem. It's not a problem that you feel frustrated or angry or uneasy. It's a problem that we're not addressing how we can stop those things from happening. So our emotions are the information, right? Frustrated, angry, uneasy. This is telling us something, right? Negative emotions are not failures, they're feedback. The body is a feedback loop. When we experience something in the world, we will have an accompanying emotion about it. And so we need to listen to what that's saying. Your body will respond before your brain does. It is a constant that when we are having emotional experiences, our brain then starts thinking, why is this happening? Why am I upset? What's happening? So that's why you might experience processing after something has happened, where you start thinking wait a minute, now I'm thinking about it, that actually was rude, right? Or even when you start coming up with really good comebacks in your head after the argument already happened, it's because we need to process the information. Our brain takes a little bit of time to piece things together, but your body is already letting you know that it did not feel good. So emotions we want to use as data. Like, what has this told me? What are some of my own patterns? Like, how can I really start to make sense of my own feelings? And so it's not something to erase, it's something to use. We want to use these things. Write them down. Write what happened, right? Explain how you felt about it and what you would like to change about those interactions. We are going to use our emotions with purpose. And so always listen to your body. Trust your body. So now we're going to talk about frustration as the clue, right? This is one of the big clues for where we want to have a boundary. And so we use that as a signal. And so if you are repeating yourself frequently, that is going to cause frustration. And so this is going to be a place where you might need to set a boundary. So let's say the frustration is over household chores, right? You and your partner live together, and you have a preference for how your room is either organized or how clean it is. If you guys have sat down and had an agreement about what that looks like, but then one partner continues to break that agreement, you will notice yourself constantly saying it. Well, you said this, you said that, you said this. Well, if they said it and they are not agreeing to it, what will you do now? You cannot force them to act the way you want to act. Please listen to me. You cannot force people to act how you want them to act, if only. Oh, what a dream. What a dream to make people act how we want them to. It ain't happening. It's not coming. Let's just let that dream sail. And so we have to understand that if they're not going to do it, what are you going to do? We have to understand our own perspectives. So is this such a serious problem that you would like to have separate rooms? People do it all the time, right? How would you like to change things because this person is not willing to stand by their agreement? Explaining your feelings just to be dismissed. This is a really hard one because emotionally, it can start to feel like you are over exaggerating, or maybe even the person makes you feel like you should not be upset about these things. But the truth is you are, right? You are upset about these things. You do think they matter, right? You do want to have a real conversation about why this is important to you. And so this tells us that we need to have a boundary around not just actions, but also communication. Right? Making sure that partners are feeling validated, telling our partner what makes us feel invalidated, so that way they can learn to shift and adjust that language accordingly. And then having frustration with work calls and emails after hours. Do not disturb. Y'all really start to love do not disturb, right? Turn it on. And so if you notice that it's happening frequently, right, you're constantly being called in, or you're constantly being asked questions after hours, and that's not the kind of job you have, right? You don't have an on-call job. You don't have a life or death situation kind of job, right? You're going to start sensing the frustration, and that's where we are going to have to start communicating boundaries with either work communications, email, Slack, whatever it might be. So moving into anger, right? Anger is a response, not the root cause, right? Anger is a secondary emotion. We typically feel anger because some other injustice has happened. So if someone, right, lies to us, we do feel angry, but we are likely also feeling sad or maybe even betrayed. Right? And feeling betrayed and sad can make us very angry, right? But it is not the only emotion that we are experiencing. And so again, anger is a message. We want to figure out what has caused the anger, not just the situation that caused the anger, but what emotions caused the anger as well. So anger often shows up after being hurt, disrespected, or overgiving, right? So maybe you're being taken advantage of, right? You feel like people are constantly asking you for things and you are not willing to give it. Maybe you've given more than you have, right? You're asking, and people get very proud about giving their last dollar or giving their last dime. Don't stop giving your last. You don't have anything left for yourself, right? That is not a source of pride. That is self-abandonment. And then last, right, lines have already been crossed. If you're constantly drawing a line in the sand and they're just stepping over them every single time, you're going to get pissed. Rightfully so, right? Like, nobody likes to be ignored, and ignoring anger doesn't make it go away. It just gets louder. It gets more intense. It turns from anger to fury. And that's exactly what we want to avoid with boundaries. Not open to their emotions, but this is a very common effect because if we're pushing it down, right, eventually the things will pop up. My joke is always that you want to think about your emotions like a plate at the buffet. Just because they put more plates on top and that spring goes down does not mean it is not there. It's just hidden. And eventually it will come out. And so when emotions are ignored, we will constantly say, like, it's okay, it's fine, even though we know it's not okay, even though we know we don't like it and we don't want them to treat us that way. Right? Maybe you're even notice yourself pushing past small irritations, like, oh, well, they did it again. Like, yeah, they always are doing that. Somebody ate my lunch, and that would send me through the roof because I don't play about my food. So small irritations can be very large irritations to others. Until one day you're like, I'm sick of this and I ain't gonna take it no more. And then boom. Everything explodes. All the things that you've been holding in for months, potentially years, maybe even not on the person who deserves it, right? But it was just the straw that broke the camel's back. This has really harmful implications depending on where and when we explode, because it could be in public, right? And that could end up causing legal issues, right? It could be with a significant other, and that's going to cause significant relational harm, right? It could be with family, and so like familial ties get broken. And so it's really important that we're managing our emotions before the explosion. Volcanoes are scary, and when people turn into volcanoes, they are equally scary. So the explosions are not random. It's not happening like out of nowhere. It's happening because you've constantly been pushing things down that you need to let go of. So boundaries don't have to be big, right? They do not have to be this huge, elaborate something. Boundaries can always be just small, quick corrections, right? It's not intervention. It's not to tell people like, well, you have to do A, B, and C. Right? It's simply letting people know, like, oh, that didn't feel good. Can you not do that again? Like, oh, actually, I'm not comfortable with you standing that close. Can you back up, please? Like, do not touch my things without asking me first, right? I want to give permission before someone uses this. Sorry, that doesn't work for me. Very quick, easy signals, right? It doesn't have to always be the communication of like, well, if you do this, then I will do that, right? First, we want to just work on setting the boundary so people know what does or does not feel good for us, what does or does not work for us. And so as you practice boundaries, start working on just telling people what you do not like, what you do not want, and what behavior makes you uncomfortable. So handle it early so it does not become emotional debt. Boundaries versus control. Now, this is a big one, and we're probably going to spend a little bit of time on this because a lot of people will try to use boundaries as a way to control other people's behavior. Not around these parts. When we talk about healthy selfish, we're never talking about how you can control someone else's behavior. And it's very important that you recognize that this is not to make people act how you want them to act. And even if, and especially if, right, like you might be right. They might be acting crazy, right? They might be wilding out and you could be correct that they should act different. that don't matter. I can't stress enough that sometimes being right does not matter. You cannot control their behavior. You do not get to decide what is right for them. You do not get to use your boundaries as a way to police others. So boundaries for me, not for thee. And so how do you know if your boundary is like disguising control, right? The big question you should always ask, if their behavior doesn't change, if they keep everything the same, will my life be impacted at all? That is the big thing, right? If they are, right, let's say you have a Karen in your family, right? They're that person who's fussing and they're arguing with people at the store, right? You didn't give me enough of this, right? This took too long. And they're just like losing it everywhere you go. It gets uncomfortable. You just don't even want to deal with it. So, right, that behavior does impact them. I would even argue to say that behavior can definitely cause a little bit of secondhand embarrassment, right? And so, but it's not us, right? It's not impacting me. So I don't get to tell them that they should change. I can tell them that I don't want to be around that, but I don't get to tell them that they have to stop doing that because it's not my feelings, right? They're not yelling at me. They're not, right, having a whole call my manager situation, right? It's not my what ifs where I'm like, well, what if somebody does call the cops on you? What if like this escalates into a physical situation? What if things go wrong? Those are my own fears, not theirs. And then for our fears, right? Like, well, what if you eventually get across somebody where this ruins your life, like this ruins the people who are with you, right? These are all of my fears and concerns, but none of these things are actually things that are happening to me. When they do happen to me, boom, absolutely, right? That switches things from being from being about control to being a boundary, because now it has come into my bubble, right? When our bubble gets impacted, that's when we know, okay, now I have to set a boundary to make sure that this is not impacting me. Now, secondhand embarrassment does impact me. I have horrible I don't even like watching people on television go through cringy moments. I definitely could not have somebody in my life who made me live cringy moments. And so let's say I did have a Karen for a friend. How would I set that boundary? Likely it would be, hey, you are always welcome to come to my house, right? If we have something, if we have a party, if we do all that, but I'm not going to go out with you because it has felt uncomfortable on multiple occasions when you've done this. I'm not telling them that they have to stop doing that. I'm not telling them that they should actually stop hollering at people who are just working their jobs, right? But it feels uncomfortable for me. I don't want to be around that. It does not feel good. It does not reflect well on me. And so I am going to remove myself and tell you in the instances where I'm willing to have you in my life. If that does not work for them, they are then able to make whatever choices that they would like to make. But again, this never talks about how they should change their behavior, right? Or why I think that their behavior is wrong. It is simply telling them that I am uncomfortable with that, and here are the places where I will be comfortable with us interacting. So, if nothing tangible changes, you might be seeking comfort, not a boundary, right? I would be more comfortable if that friend was not a Karen, right? But it would not change my life. So why do we want control, right? What's good about it? Honestly, control feels good. As a former control freak, it feels so good for everything to happen exactly the way you want it to happen. Like it's given the A-team. I love it when a plan comes together. But control is usually about safety, right? It's about knowing what we think is going to happen. It's trying to like manage anxiety. It's our own way to try to feel like we know what to expect next. But unfortunately, life don't work that way. right? Like we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know how things are going to like unfold. And so control does not really help us. It is simply an illusion. It pretends like we can control things, but if lightning struck right now, listen, let me knock on a little bit of wood, right? Like I could not stop that. And so we do want to make sure that we are not seeking any kind of certainty when it comes to boundaries, right? We cannot always force things to happen in the way that we think that they should. And so just pay attention to, as you are creating boundaries, you're not trying to make life stay so stagnant. It is not stagnant. Change is the norm of the universe. And so we have to flow with it. We just want to make it a little bit easier. And so it's not other people's jobs to soothe our fears, right? It is an inside job. We are not using control to make other people make us. Boundary sounds like this, right? Boundary is the action that you are taking. I'm not comfortable with this, so I'm going to do this, right? If you've ever had somebody, or even like your mom in the store, they start chatting up somebody and they're doing all these like uncomfortable jokes. You're like, oh my God, no, I can't. I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna go over here. You have a great time. If y'all laughing and joking and kikiing, you got it. I'm just gonna go over here because that made me uncomfortable. Letting someone know if this behavior continues, I'm just gonna remove myself. Now, I'm gonna give y'all a real big pro tip that I think you should take forever. Don't hang out with hotheads. If you know a hothead, go ahead and just only hang out with them at home. Because unfortunately, when you do have a hothead, you are not thinking through your choices well, right? Once you get angry, once your head gets hot, all sense and reason go out of the window. And so if you have a friend like that, where out of nowhere they might just pop off, it's really important that you start to recognize that you will have to remove yourself because they will not be in control of their self. And so last, I'm not going to participate in that. If people are saying, like, coming up with ideas like, oh, we should, I remember my friends are like, oh, we're going to like dine and dash. And I said, oh, absolutely not. I don't know about y'all. No. Monique's going to be right here and pay her bill, because you want to know who's too much of a priss to go to jail? Me. Absolutely not. And so be very clear. Say what you will and will not do, right? We want to use boundaries as a way for people to understand where our own lines are. So we're not trying to convince people that our boundaries are, right, worth it or reasonable. We're not over-explaining our boundaries. We're not holding other people's emotions hostage, meaning that like hotheads can't be hotheads because we're friends, right? You can be a hothead, but that is going to change your friendship. Right? I'm not holding your emotions hostage. I'm not forcing you to do anything, but I do have, right, standards for how I behave in the places and spaces that I'm in. And no negotiations either, right? Like, don't get me wrong, boundaries are going to be flexible, and we'll talk about that later, but your boundaries are not a negotiation. It's not here for people to tell you what is and is not reasonable. You get to decide that. That's why we start this episode with choice. It is your choice what your boundaries are. Do not let other people try to water them down. So the goal is not emotional comfort. It's clarity, right? And we talked about this in some past episodes, where it is important that you recognize feeling bad does not mean things are wrong. Feeling bad is just a recognition of change and discomfort. Right? And so boundaries won't always be comfortable, but boundaries always will be necessary. And so use your emotions as information. Understand how you feel, what things you want to pay attention to. There's a wonderful app called How We Feel, or you can use a feelings wheel, and I love them both. And those are great ways to be able to help process our emotions and understand what went wrong and where that boundary might need to be. And so what you can do is, when you go on the How We Feel app or on the feelings wheel, I always recommend choosing 3 emotions about a situation that you're facing. And then simply go ahead and journal and say, I feel blank because. So if I feel frustrated, why? Right? If I'm starting to feel abandoned, Why? Am I feeling betrayed? Why? What's pulling that up for you? What's making that feel so visceral? Because these emotions aren't just hanging around for kicks and giggles, right? They're hanging around so we can understand our own self. Boundaries are choices. We don't want them to be reactions, right? We want you to go into understanding your boundaries with your head clear and your mind steady, right? We don't want to just be like, well, you did this and I didn't like it, so bye. No, right? We're like, hey, I noticed that this has been a pattern and that makes me uncomfortable, right? I'm not going to participate in that anymore. That is the kind of reaction that we want, right? We want them to be like a well thought out choice. And when it does happen, we are able to clearly communicate. And so, homework, because always homework. What is this feeling trying to tell me about my limits, right? Download that How We Feel app, look for the feelings wheel, and try to figure out, like, what are your emotions telling you about your limits? What are the limits, right? Why have you come up with those? Are there specific ways that you have grown up that maybe your parents taught you specific things, maybe friends taught you certain things, right? Like, where did it come from? We want to be curious. We want to figure out ourselves for the love of the game, right? Not to make other people happy, but just to understand, right, why things might be so visceral. And so practice your homework, do a little bit of journaling, and tag me and let me know once you've kind of figured out a little bit of something. And so thank you so much for your time. As always, right, I'm so privileged to be able to teach you about boundaries. I really want you to use this information as a way to acknowledge your own feelings and your own limits. Again, I am Monique Selman with Becoming Enriched, and this is Healthy Selfish, the show. You can find me on all socials at Becoming Enriched, and I'll see you next time.